Hello, fans on YouTube, fans on Rever. Welcome to another edition of the MJA Presents. Today we're going to talk about the transitive property of professional wrestling. First, let me give you some background information. Inequality. A mathematical sentence built from expressions using one or more of the following symbols: less than, greater than, less than or equal to, or greater than and equal to. With me so far? Let's try another one. Professional wrestling, a non-competitive professional sport that is also considered an athletic performing art. Now, can professional wrestling be considered an inequality? And that answer, of course, is yes. Now, why can it be considered an inequality? Well, in this instance, a professional wrestling match is non-competitive, as I spoke about in the definition, and it has a predetermined outcome. So since it's scripted, the basic concept to a match is that one wrestler is automatically better or greater than another wrestler. So now, back to the math. The transitive property of inequalities states the following: if A is less than B and B is less than C, then A should also be less than C. Now, using this mathematical concept, a booker can create cards and group talent accordingly. Now let's try and put it into action here. For instance, Owen Hart beats Farouk for the Intercontinental title October 5th, 1997. Stone Cold beats Owen Hart for the same title November 4th, 1997. So therefore, Stone Cold could beat Farouk, and did many times while he was climbing the ladder in the WWF. Lex Luger beats Barry Windham for the U.S. title February 20th, 1989. Lex Luger would also beat Barry Windham July 14th, 1991 for the World Heavyweight title. Barry would never trade titles with Luger. He only lost them. So there's consistency in your booking. Transitive property was being used as far back as I can tell into the 70s and other, major promotions at the time. Take the NWA in 1979. Jimmy Snuka beat Rick Steamboat for the U.S. title, again, September 1st, 1979. Ric Flair beat Jimmy Snuka early on in the next year, for the U.S. title, April 19th, 1980. Because of that booking, you would assume that Ric Flair should be greater than Rick Steamboat. And that, in fact, was the case, as Ric Flair beat Rick Steamboat prior to all of that, April 1st, 1979, for that mid-card title. Now, it's also not just used in your mid-card titles or your heavyweight titles. You can throw it into any championship match that you see fit. Let's take a look at the women's division in the WWE. Trish Stratus beat Molly Holly for the women's title in, September of 2002. Victoria beat Trish Stratus for the women's title November of 2002. And, of course, Victoria beats Molly Holly and shaves her head at WrestleMania 20, giving us our first bald women's wrestler. Don't you love consistency? Now, when this property becomes cyclical, you no longer have, one guy greater than the other. You have a division, because you got one guy that can beat another guy, but that guy can beat this guy, but this guy's beating the other guy. That's where you have your groupings. And that's where you get your jobbers, your mid-card talent, and then your top-tier main eventers. And a prime example of this is TNA's X Division 2005-2006. AJ Styles beating Christopher Daniels, September of 2005. Samoa Joe beats AJ Styles, December of 2005. And then March of 2006, Christopher Daniels beats Samoa Joe. Now, all three of these guys put on phenomenal matches with each other and basically carried that division. Now, later on in the year, in 2006, they'd introduced Chris Sabin into the mix. So you had AJ Styles beat Chris Sabin November of 2006. Christopher Daniels would then beat AJ Styles November of 2006. And then Chris Sabin would beat Christopher Daniels in January of 2007, all trading the X Division title. Now, all four of these guys were the main event for that division. I mean, they were, if not the main event for the company, because the X Division was phenomenal at that point. So, like I said, this is your division building portion of the transitive property. Now, in association with this property, you can help to generate ideas for the writers to go along with these matches. For instance, and we'll take TNA again as the example, Kurt Angle beats Sting for the TNA World title. Samoa Joe then beats Kurt Angle for the TNA title. So, at that point, don't you think Sting versus Samoa Joe would be a logical match to book? Guess what? It's currently being done on TV. And this is why. Because the transitive property is, again, put into action. Not only can you do it with stuff that's currently on TV, but you can use this to foster future feuds. For instance, just this last July, we had Shelton Benjamin beating Matt Hardy to win the U.S. title. Matt Hardy beats John Morrison the week before on ECW television. What about Shelton Benjamin versus John Morrison? I think that'd be a decent match. I have no idea how they'd build into a story with it, but it'd be a decent match. And I'm sure the writers can come up with some reason why the gold standard would need to fight the Shaman of Sexy. It can be done. Now, there's only one problem with the transitive property of professional wrestling, and it's the exception to the rule of the transitive property. It's a fallacy in the argument because it is, again, generated by, a script that you have to count on. It's something we like to call the Hogan rule. Some people might know it as the Goldberg rule or the Cena rule, but it's basically when one person is booked to win over everyone, no matter what. Hogan was notorious for this in the 80s in WWF, and then into the 90s into WCW. John Cena, for a while, 2.5, 3 years, was pushed on WWE television. Goldberg in WCW and in the WWE also was booked never to lose. When guys like that get pushed, it not only ruins the credibility of other wrestlers, but it also hurts booking matches later on. And the most recent example of this is with John Cena now on television. Granted, he's off television because of injury right now, but John Cena has been on a down push since he came back and won the Royal Rumble. John Cena can't get the job done at a pay-per-view because he's got nobody to feud with. Because he's beaten everyone. And unless he's in the world title picture, chasing that title, there's nothing he can do to build any momentum. So they have him putting over younger talent and putting over existing talent just to kind of keep things moving and establish credible main eventers. JBL, he's helping at this point. He put JBL back into the main event. That's why JBL and Punk were feuding. You also have him giving the rub to Crime Time. Now Crime Time, all of a sudden, after hanging out with John Cena, tag team championship material. So now they're feuding with Rhodes and DiBiase. So this is the mode that you're put in after the fact, which, again, now hurts John Cena's credibility. So it'll be interesting to see where people pick up after this, because you never really know how it's going to shake out until the dust is settled, basically. So, but that's what I got for the transitive property of wrestling. This is the man, the myth, the legend of the Midwest Jobbers Association saying, take care.